Hey guys, Connor here with Nico from Kamerastore.com, bringing you another top 10 video. This time we have the top 10 point and shoots for 2023. We did a similar video last year, but the point and shoot market is quite volatile, so these can change almost at any moment, basically. Their placing and new ones can pop onto the list. Yeah, why don't we just get right into it then?
Yeah. Starting with number 10, we're going to go from 10 to number 1, so stay, put for the video, is the Nikon L35AF.
So the Nikon L35AF was sort of Nikon's first foray into the compact camera market. This is a pretty simple camera, all things considered. It's just a point and shoot with a 35mm f2.8. Nice design, not too big, not too small, simple controls. One thing that people really love about this camera is the manual ISO control. So you can change the ISO manually, and that sort of gives you a modicum of exposure control. So you can overexpose or underexpose depending on the ISO that you put on the camera versus the ISO of the film. There are ISO 400 models and ISO 1000 models. So those 1000 models are generally more sought after by people looking for them because it just gives you more flexibility.
Yeah, it probably also helps you if you want to push. Like if you're someone like me that likes to push your film a stop or two depending on the light conditions, like it's a nice choice. And in the point and shoot realm, usually, those set parameters and settings, we're not always on the lower end models. And then we have a couple alternatives for each one because every time we make the top 10, we get a lot of comments of people missing their favorite camera. So we made a couple of recommendations based on kind of what the models are and the spectrum of high end, low end.
Yeah.
So for the Nikon L35AF, we have a lot with a similar name.
Yeah, well, they're all sort of from this same early era of autofocus compacts. So the naming was kind of following a bit of a scheme. The first one would be the Konica C35AF, and that's the very first compact camera and mass-produced camera, I believe, to have autofocus at all. It uses a sort of interesting passive rangefinder style system that's maybe not very fast by today's standards, but it was a technological breakthrough in 1977, I believe, when it came out.
Yeah. And then we have Canon copying the homework with instead of the L35AF like the Nikon we have here, it's the AF35L, which is hilarious if you ask me. Also similar style. These are all very like early on point and shoots.
Yeah.
They are not like a very quick snappy kind of cameras.
No.
If you don't like kind of meditate a little bit on the shot, sometimes you'll probably miss. I have had problems with the early AF, not being the best. You kind of have to be like centered, and actually you read the manuals because usually it tells you like how to compose and hold. Some of them have like the half press to hold focus and exposure, and then change your composition if you need to a little bit. And then we have some of the same family, basically the Nikon L35AF3, which you recommended.
Yeah, so the L35AF and the L35AF2 get a lot of searches. They're very popular. But the 3, despite being very similar in terms of functionality, just hasn't seen a price increase or a popularity increase the same way. So if you're looking for a Nikon camera with a 35mm 2.8 lens and relatively fast handling, I mean, the Model 3 probably is even faster focusing and more accurate than the first one. So take a look at that.
And then we have the underwater version.
Yes, the L35AW.
All weather, I guess.
All weather, yes. It's basically a L35AF2 in a underwater case, but you obviously can't remove the camera from it. It's built for underwater use. We probably wouldn't recommend you go diving with it, but it definitely can handle some rain, some splashes, inclement weather. And it's just really nice looking. It's got, maybe we can put a photo somewhere, but it's got really nice 80s style. There's a blue one, there's I think an orange one as well.
Probably, yeah.
They're really nice looking.
Usually they're made to be seen underwater. I think orange is the last color you stop seeing when you go underwater, like deep.
Oh.
That's why the Nikonos was style orange. That's what I think. I might be corrected by the comments, which would be very nice.
Please, divers, let us know.
Yes.
What color do you see last?
Well, the Apple thing watch has an orange also color. Maybe it is true. We have the L135 AF2, which I guess 135 refers to the format, as 35 millimeter film is
Yeah.
properly known as 135.
Yep.
And that's, I guess, a simpler version.
Yeah, so the L35 AF was, and I believe it's known as the One Touch in North America, was sort of the higher end line of Nikon's compact cameras, and then the L135 AF, and it's a confusing name for sure, which is probably why this one isn't so popular, is a slightly lower end model with a f3.5 lens instead, a design that's maybe more polarizing. You thought it was pretty ugly when I showed you a picture.
Yeah.
Um,
Reminds me of the VTV
yeah,
show.
yeah, it's a bit polarizing.
Yeah.
Um,
But it has the red
Yeah,
line. Instead of having
yeah.
just a line like this, it does like a V on the front of the lens.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a cheaper entry. So I think with this like spectrum, you can find something that's maybe within your budget.
So number 9 is the Olympus AF1, an sort of early waterproof camera. This one again isn't for diving, but it's splash proof. It's meant to be rain proof. It's a bit of a predecessor to the Mu 1 and Mu 2 series, which are incredibly popular, and we may talk about later. But the AF1 is really a great choice if maybe you don't need something that's incredibly small, but you still want that 35 millimeter 2.8 lens and the safety given to you by that light weatherproofing.
And it has a cover. I think that's one thing that is also nice in some point and
Yeah.
shoots is the idea that you have kind of like a, I won't say clamshell, but almost clamshell-ish cover. And
Yeah.
it's very, like, I find point and shoots to be very important that can be kind of held with one hand. As many times you just pull it out of your pocket and you just like want to open it and shoot. Like you see, it's one hand operation. That's like a problem I've had with other point and shoots that don't use this like right-handed also shooting style door. But yeah, like you said, 35 f2.8, it kind of is like very much the same, if not the same as the MJU 2, which now commands a premium.
Yep.
And its boxy design is actually, to me, not that bad. It is square-ish. It, not. It's just not a bad option. And we have the alternatives, which go close to this model. So we start with the
Well, the Olympus AF10 Super. That would be sort of the lower end version of this, or I believe a slightly newer but also lower end version of this camera that also has a sliding lens door clamshell kind of design. I believe an f3.5 lens, but it is slightly smaller. I think the weatherproofing is gone as well, but a lower price point.
Yeah, and the Super, I think, lets you control flash, which is one of those things that if you also, like we said before, there's certain features that are you want to have on a camera, like a point and shoot, if you can. It's a little bit more control. And the ISO setting of the Nikon L35 is good, but also the flash on or off is something that if you are a little more serious with your photography, you sometimes want to choose if you want flash. Other alternatives, we have one here.
We have the Konica Lexio 70W. Where is that?
This is the well, this is the Lexio 70, not the W.
Okay, so the difference here between the Lexio 70 we have here and the Lexio 70W is, I believe, the wide angle of the lens is slightly wider on the W. I think that's what W stands for. But this is, again, another point and shoot with a sliding lens cover. Slightly similar boxy design. You can see the Konica is quite a bit smaller. No weatherproofing, I believe, in this one, but a zoom lens. So this is, I think, the first zoom lens that we've mentioned. Zoom lens cameras are great options for 99% of photographic purposes. It's really only in low light where you'll notice the benefits of the 35 2.8. Otherwise, a zoom lens will really get the job done for you and are oftentimes quite a bit cheaper than the prime lenses. So
yeah, which when they came out, they were always the premium ones.
Yeah.
And the prime lenses were a bit more niche. And now it's the other way around. People want primes and don't want zoom. So always try to find any of the ones we mentioned in this list as zoom options because you probably will save some money. And like you said, they're probably not that bad or actually worse than the prime ones. But yeah, and then we have as the other alternative, even though it might be a little bit out of scope, is the MJU. I always say that wrong. Is Mu 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I'm Spanish,
history.
so I read wrong. So yeah, this is, like we talked, AF1. It's the same kind of design, obviously styled further, so it's now not just box camera, and it has this like nice like door. It has the 35 2.8. This is always a very premium camera. It's might be in the list again, but yeah, this is an alternative if you have a higher budget and you kind of want something that fits in your pocket a little nicer than the AF1.
Yeah.
But yeah, this camera has kind of like the controls, the flash control, the spot meter option, all that, and some weatherproofing, not like underwater, but you know,
Yeah.
light rain or mist will be okay.
Sort of similar to the AF1. You can really see the evolution in design and like materials processing that they had from the AF1 to the Mewtwo.
This one's the ultra compact camera.
It's ultra compact. It's very, very small.
But yeah, that's the last option. Obviously, higher price, but it's an option if you want to go for that 35 2.8 Olympus glass.
Yeah. I want to introduce number 8.
Number 8 is the Ricoh GR1. This goes more of a family of products because, as you know, Ricoh still makes these in the digital realm. So they're making the GR, whatever they're called in the digital realm, because I actually have no idea.
GR3.
GR3, yeah, maybe. But yeah, basically very, very, very compact cameras. They're thinner than a roll of 35 millimeter. You actually can see the bulge is where the canister goes, and the film then goes to the other side. Like I said, it's a family of products. They had wider lenses, and then they had basically 35, 28, maybe 21, if I'm not mistaken. They have a 21.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, I think they do. I think Araki shot with that one. But yeah, they're very sleek. They're nice. They tend to have a lot of electronic failure, especially the LCD. But those nowadays have been starting to be replaced by some repair shops because they are made cheaply nowadays. But yeah, you can see the size differences. Like if you go to the thickness, it's basically like half. Well, maybe not half from this corner, but like it's very consistent and small. So yeah, these are well sought out for. They're nice. They have quite a lot of features and exposure compensation. So we're talking like a little bit more on the high end of the point and shoots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's awesome little camera.
And I think one of the defining features of at least the GR1, the standard GR1, is the 28 millimeter lens versus the 35 that you see on a lot of other popular prime lens point and shoots. This 28 sort of sets it apart as being a wide angle lens, and people that do street, you know, a lot of them use 28 as their primary focal length. So this is really the point and shoot for them versus, you know, the 35 millimeter you see on the Yashica or the Nikon, or even the 40 on something like the Contax T2. So for alternatives for the Ricoh GR1, we're suggesting some other point and shoots with 28 millimeter lenses. That includes, or with wider lenses than 35. The first one would be the Nikon 28 Ti. Again, another premium option. We don't have one on the table, but it's more in line with something like the Contax T2 or like a Mini Lux in terms of build quality and just quality in general. But again, a 28 millimeter lens that really sets it apart from the point and shoot crowd.
Yeah, it's the high, like we're talking, this is one of the higher end point and shoots. So we're comparing them to some of the higher end or some wide options. Then we have the Fuji Natura S, which is a bit of a weird camera that was mostly sold in the Japan market. You can still find them online, obviously, and they're rare. The difference with this camera, it has, I'm not mistaken, a 24 1.9 lens. So we're talking wide and, you know, and fast lens. The actual back element hits the film when you turn it off. It's a beautiful design. I owned one back in the day, and they were made to read 1600 film, so they would activate a night mode and do like shorter exposures, not try to pop the flash so often. But yeah, now that 1600 film is gone as a default, you will have to either hack your ISO or do something like that. But they're pretty cool cameras, and like we said, on the wide spectrum, on the prime also.
The next one would be the Canon Prima Mini. That's a not quite 28, it's a 32 millimeter lens, but again, a very small body, very contoured, sort of a bit unlike the Ricoh GR1, which is a little bit boxy, but very small. The Canon is small as well, but it's a bit more rounded. We can throw up a picture.
Yeah. And as a cheap alternative in the same line of cameras is the Ricoh R1, which is I guess somehow, I think it was the first one or the cheapest one, something like that.
Yeah.
But it's actually a very affordable option if you want to go with the same body style, but save a couple,
Yeah.
bucks on it.
And how could you not want to go with this body style?
It's really cool.
This is really like, we were talking just before we started filming that this is sort of the point where you can't design it any smaller. You just can't make it any smaller. You have to find a new medium. And luckily, digital came along.
Yeah.
And then we could make them a little bit smaller. But
And we could mention that like Ricoh now owns Pentax, and they have mentioned that they want to bring out a point and shoot again. And a lot of people are dreaming that this is the design we'll get. So let's keep our hopes up, and maybe in 2023, 2024, we get a point and shoot that looks like this and shoots film. Well, that would be amazing.
yeah. I
And
wouldn't
then-
be surprised if Ricoh still had the molds for that in the factory.
You never know. Then we have number 7, which is the Yashica T3, which is a boxier camera.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great camera. It has the waist level finder here, which is a pretty cool feature, as well as the standard eye level finder. It has the Carl Zeiss 35 f2.8 Tessar, which is a consistent thing in the Yashica T line. And this just fantastic 80s styling if this is what you're into. It's clunky, it's loud, it's big for a point and shoot. But it's great for all those reasons as well. So if that's something that you're into, then
Yeah.
you'll really enjoy the Yashica T3.
Yeah, and this is back to what I was saying about hand holding. If I'm holding it with my right hand, I still need my left to open and turn on the camera. That is, to me, a feature that has made me not use this camera so much. But it is nice. And it does go like, to me, it goes like after this first era of the Nikon L35AF.
Yeah.
Then they kind of came into this clunky, but a little bit more stylish
Yeah.
point and shoots. And we have the alternatives if we want to go through those.
A great alternative to the Yashica T3 would be the Ricoh FF90. As that whole FF, there's the FF70, the FF90 Super, that line. And we can put a picture up so you can see why I'm recommending this. And it really looks like a Yashica T3. It has a similar lens cover. It is similarly chunky and with a 35 f2.8 lens.
Yeah.
Takes great photos, doesn't have the price increase that sometimes comes when Carl Zeiss gets involved in a project. Just great cameras, and if that's sort of style is what you're looking for, then it's something worth considering for sure.
And I think the Yashica name with the T3, T4, T5 is a bit more on the higher end because people are searching for that. So the price commands like a little bit go up when people search them more. So having a Ricoh FF90, which is probably something a lot of people haven't heard, usually gives you better deals. Then we have the Canon MC, which I've used here at the store.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the XA
Yeah.
of the boxy design. It has the flash, which you attach separately. I think it has a 35 2.8 or a 32 2.8, and I might be mistaken exactly on the specs because I haven't used it in a long time. But that one is also quite strange. A lot of people don't look for it.
Yeah.
I find it very beautiful in its design.
I love the design.
It has a
It's-
bit of
it's
this
super pretty looking.
boxy-ish, but more stylish in
Yeah.
a way. So yeah, that'd be a good alternative if you want.
Yeah, I mean the XA is a great comparison because that's very clearly where they got their inspiration
Yeah.
from with the detachable flash and the like almost square body, and the sliding lens cover as well. Yeah, great camera with the 80s style design, sort of merging that clamshell 70s like Olympus XA with the
Yeah.
new school autofocus. There is some criticism of the autofocus system.
Yeah, I had
That's the
problems
main
there.
criticism. But it is an early autofocus camera, so there is, some clunkiness to be expected, I would say.
The detachable flash is nice if you want to go smaller.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that's just like having a manual flash switch is to just take the thing off if you don't want it.
And some might be asking, why is the Olympus XA not on this list at all? And that is because that is a rangefinder camera, even though it doesn't look like one. So it's not there for that reason.
Yeah.
Now-
The XA2 and XA3 would be kind of point and shoots. They're still zone focus cameras rather than autofocus cameras like the ones that we have on the list.
Yeah.
So a bit halfway, but the XA is a full rangefinder with aperture priority, so it's really doesn't handle the same way as the cameras we're talking about here.
Yeah. And the last one is the Konica C35AF, which has been previously mentioned. So kind of in the line of the Nikon L35AF. But as you can see, they're kind of a similar boxy-ish design themselves. So yeah, that's another alternative if you want something like the Yashica T3 and you don't have the budget for that.
Yeah, if you want something that has that same aesthetic, which is a big part of, why a lot of people pick film cameras these days.
Yeah, they're retro looking.
Yeah.
And then number 6
is maybe the only one we don't have here. It's the Canon Prima Mini that I mentioned earlier.
we have a Prima 4,
We
which
have a
is
Prima 4, which is
the
not
ugly cousin.
quite the same thing, and this is not a good representation of what the Prima series is capable of. Really, the Prima line, the reason we think this is on the list is that it is a Prima series, and they have different names in Japan and North America, but the whole Prima series is really Canon's line of high-end point and shoots, with prime ones like the Prima Mini and zoom ones like, I think the 115U is a very popular and well-made option. But there's tons of Primas out there, and really, they're all good, and they all get the job done. They're all built pretty well, and offer some unique features. There's this one, the Prima 4, which is really ugly, but can take 4 continuous pictures if you set it to. Just like 1, 2, 3, 4, which is kind of a unique feature.
Yeah. But yeah, the Prima is there. Like you said, it's a family of products. The Mini is the one that has the prime lens and it's like a bit more, it reminds me a bit of the big Mini in the design. It's just instead of being a square box on the front, it's a little bit more roundish.
Yeah.
But it is, like you said, the premium option from Canon. It didn't get more than that. Like Canon didn't go further like Contax did, or, Yashica kind of did with their T4 and T5s. But yeah, let's go to the alternatives. We have a few that have been mentioned already before, but let's just give people similar options.
Yeah, so the Ricoh R1 that we mentioned, sort of the lower end version of the GR1, is a great choice. The Lexio 70W we mentioned as well with the zoom lens. There's also the Canon AS1, which is Canon's sort of answer to the earlier mentioned Nikon L35AW, sort of a weatherproof underwater-ish camera. We can put a photo up. It's really nice looking, and manual flash control on that, which is nice.
And one thing to mention about the underwater or weather cameras is usually they perform fine out of the water. So don't be scared of using like you said AS1 or the Nikon L35AW. Even the Nikonos with the 35 is known to be very good outside the water.
Yeah.
So because it is an underwater camera, it doesn't mean you can't take it in normal conditions. And also, it might be a point and shoot that you want to take to a holiday or a festival or out clubbing because, who hasn't spilled the drink on something. So just take it into consideration. You might be not underwater, but, splashed with liquids.
They're all weather cameras.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe the AS is all seasons.
Could be.
Yeah.
So we go with number 5?
Yeah, we'll go right to number 5, which is the Konica Big Mini. And again, this is a series of cameras. There's quite a lot, actually, of cameras with the Big Mini name. And I believe we have one of the only ones that's not actually labeled Big Mini, the Konica A4, which is an earlier model, I believe. But it's a series of cameras, mostly with prime lenses around 35 millimeter. There are some zooms, but these are Konica's sort of highest end compact cameras from this era, and Konica made quite a lot of compacts during this era. One defining feature of the Big Mini is the close focus ability, which I've shot a few rolls with these. I find it super useful and fun.
0.35 on this model, and 0.35 to 0.06, it actually says it on the top. Not that you might see it on the B cam, but it has a button. I guess you press the button and it kind of like knows that you're going that close.
It locks the focus to that distance, and then it's up to you to, measure that and figure out how far away your subject is. Yeah. But it gives it a little bit more functionality than just the average point and shoot, where sometimes if I want to get close, I feel like it's hunting and not really knowing what I'm trying to take a photo of.
Yeah, and I think, Konica also falls into that. Like, not so many people search for Konica cameras. Their SLRs kind of have been on the lower spectrum for years. And the Konica Big Mini gives you that. Like, it's a little cheaper because it's not so searched for. It always reminded me of the MG1, kind of like not being so sought out for. And we actually have it as one of the alternatives, the MG1, which we have here. And this is the shiny boy, so you probably might get reflected with the lights we have
Don't
here in
go
the studio.
blind.
Yeah, don't go blind. But this is like an alternative. It's basically like the second lineup. Konica probably didn't have a higher end than that, but like in the Olympus, this is one of the cheaper versions to the Olympus MU2. It has a 35 3.5. It has that all-weather kind of design. This one's a special limited edition. That's why it's glossy and it looks like it's made out of super premium metal, even though I guess it's all plastic.
It's super, super plastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have, as an other alternative, the Samsung AF Slim. The Samsung AF Slim is basically a relabeled Konica Big Mini by Samsung. They are rare-ish because I guess not a lot of people think they were worth it or they didn't make many. We don't have any here, but I've shot the AF Slim myself, and it's a really nice camera. And if you find it, usually whoever's selling it has no idea that it's a couple hundred maybe. So you can buy it for cheap. Do make sure that it, you can test the things that you can test on a point and shoot when you're buying. But yeah, that's one camera to search. And like I said, basically the same exact design as the Big Mini. Yeah. And then we have the Minolta Riva Mini. You got to talk about this one. I have no idea about this one.
So this is a pretty basic looking point and shoot from Minolta, but it's built so well and with a lens that's so good that Leica also sold this camera as the Leica Mini. Okay. And it is maybe a bit more expensive than it would have been because of that correlation, but it is a great camera as well. I believe it's a 35 f3.5 lens. The same design maybe as the Leica one, but probably with slightly worse coatings. It fits in your hand nicely. It's probably around the same size as this Yashica T4. We don't have one on hand to show you, but we can put up a picture. Yeah, a good, solid camera. It's not super exciting, no extra features really, but if you just want a nice lens and a simple experience, that's a great choice.
And then you also mentioned the Fuji DL300, which once again is another camera I don't know about.
It's a bit of a deep cut maybe. It's a slightly larger Fuji point and shoot from their drop-in loading era. So love it or hate it. I find the drop-in loading quite fast, but you don't have to fully open the back. It only opens a little bit. You slide the film in with I believe a 32 millimeter f2.8 lens with a sliding lens cover. I think something that was interesting, because I know people that have used this camera and it meters down to very low light quite well, or the shutter can go quite a long time. Like most point and shoots would cut out at half a second, but this one can go out to maybe 5 or 6 seconds. I don't know the exact specs, but a long time. So you can do night photography with it even.
That's pretty nice as an option.
Yeah.
And then we go to number 4, which is the Yashica T4. And we've kind of mentioned a little bit about it, but yeah, Yashica camera, Zeiss glass, little lens cover, which is kind of nice because it, protects it up from bumps and like things like that.
When it's in your pocket.
Yeah, this one also has the close focus kind of functionality. It goes to 0.4, if I'm not mistaken. Remember the whole trick with the strap and the little thing? A lot of point and shoots had a design where the strap would give you the minimum focus. So this is all in the manual, so please read the manuals because like we're saying these things, but maybe not all of them have it. But the Yashica T4 became stellar because a lot of fashion photographers used them because they were good. I love the fill-in flash, option. If you're shooting with your subject against the sun, it really nails exposure. It's just small, again, right-hand operation only, no lefties. I'm left-handed, but I use my right hand obviously to shoot. But yeah, I think the Yashica T4, it's not a surprise it's on the number 4. Because it's a very nice camera. They command a higher price. They're in the range nowadays of the Olympus MU2, but I find them superior in my opinion. Build quality is not superb. Mine's gaffer taped half of it because it's coming apart, but it still shoots fine.
Yeah, I mean, I do. Like with these compared to almost any other point and shoot, I really do notice what you have been saying about the one-handed operation, that you can really you have everything right here. All the buttons are on top, right in access of your pointer finger when you're holding it.
Yeah. If you have kids, you appreciate this because you have one hand holding a kid and the other hand is holding the point and shoot. But yeah, as alternatives to that, we have the almighty T5.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's the next model in
Yeah.
the lineup. So here you can hold it if you want.
And
This one.
you can very much see the resemblance. These cameras handle quite similarly. One thing they added to the T5 that wasn't on the T4 was the waist level finder, which, you know, for some people might be a very useful feature. Although it did come at the cost of moving some buttons to the other side so that you can't really use them with one hand. This lens cover design is, I think, superior to the T4. It
it's
definitely
snappier.
is easier to find.
Yeah.
But overall, a very similar camera. I think the same lens, maybe some updated coatings, but still a 35 f3.5 Tessar.
Very, very, very similar camera. And again, built really okay-ish. It's not the
build
premium.
quality on this feels better than the T4.
Yeah.
Feels like I can't bend it as much.
And I might be wrong, but I do think the Yashica T4 did have some with the scope viewing. So anybody in the
Super or
comments
something?
go ahead and bash Connor or bash me for thinking that it's possible.
You can bash me.
Yeah, we could. It's fine. But yeah, basically the scope thing, if you haven't never seen, it's like a mini Hasselblad. You can like waist level finder, look down, and it shoots there. Obviously, it's kind of a weird perk to have, but some people like it, so it's there. So yeah, that's an alternative to the T4. It is kind of the same price range, even though it was a later model. So you know you can find it out there, and they're pretty nice.
Yeah.
And then we have next alternative.
The next one would be the Olympus Mu 2 that we mentioned, sort of as a similar price point to the T4, but a different option. A bit smaller, maybe a bit less features and a bit less easy to use with one hand, even though the clamshell type door is really nice. Both of them are highly regarded and extremely sought after point and shoots. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think these were made in maybe even the hundreds of thousands, if not millions.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the reasons they're super, super popular.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go to the next one. We have the Ricoh FF90, which
So we mentioned that
mentioned
earlier.
before.
Another camera with the 35 2.8, so it's even a little bit faster than the lens in the T4. But just a camera that really isn't well known, but can do all the things that these high-end cameras can do, basically.
Yeah. You want to introduce number 3 because this is a
Yeah.
surprise this year.
Yeah, number 3 was one that we didn't expect. It's one that didn't show up on the list last year, and that is disposable cameras.
So they
Yeah.
kind of hit the definition of a point and shoot camera.
Yep.
They don't require anything else but like pointing at your subject and pressing the button.
Yeah. Film included. You just bring the whole thing to the lab and throw it at them, and they give you prints or files later.
Yeah. And the disposable cameras, we wanted to include them. It was on the list, and we decided this is a point and shoot camera because they're extremely popular to this day.
Yeah.
We have alternatives from Fujifilm, from Kodak. Lomography has them. Ilford has them. The other Ilford has them too. So like there's plenty of options, and a lot of people want them as a party camera, a wedding table camera, a give it to your children kind of camera. And they're fine. There's nothing against them. Like I say, the target for this is humongous compared to normal point and shoots. But there is one major flaw, is that they're not reusable.
Yeah, and that's a big thing, from an ethical standpoint and from a price standpoint. If you keep shooting disposables, eventually it will be cheaper to get a regular reloadable film camera.
Yeah.
Even aside from all the benefits that would give you, like such as a nicer lens or a better flash or autofocus. This is just a fixed focus camera.
Yeah. And as an alternative, there's been a trend in the last couple of years of what I like to call disposable reusable, and it might not be the wrong name, but it's kind of the same concept, same kind of like plasticky lens, like apertures like f11 or something like that. It always shoots with a flash, but they have the added benefit that they're reloadable, which means you buy it once and you shoot as many times as you want to until it either decomposes or breaks on you because they're not made to the higher standard. But they're really decent cameras if you really want to go with something like this, but you kind of have a bit more of a earth mindset of like maybe not throw plastic every single time you shoot a roll.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're nice. And there's, like I said, multiple options from Kodak, from Ilford, from Lomography are making this. And I think this came more from maybe a customer standpoint that people were like, yeah, we don't want to keep on throwing cameras in the trash.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good option. And it's 30 bucks, 30 euros, something like that.
Which is almost the same
Price as these.
the actual disposable camera, and it's probably far superior and can be used
Multiple
indefinitely.
times. Yeah.
So
And then the last alternative to this is what Connor has basically implied is almost any cheap point and shoot will give you like a higher lifespan shooting. So if you are really liking the disposables and you are like, I don't know what to do, you can go with something. Well, Connor has this very tuned up camera that has all the stickers we have at the store.
yeah,
But basically something like this, a camera that's between 30 to 50 bucks secondhand, that doesn't have any bells and whistles, nothing special, will probably give you better results than a disposable camera. And again, you have the added benefit of, reusing it multiple times. So yeah, that's a good alternative too.
yeah. There are cameras out there that, I mean, this is a bit of a joke. This is my sticker camera, but this is a fixed focus camera with a flash, a single shutter speed, I believe a single aperture. So it's basically a disposable camera that you can reuse.
Yeah.
And this is a Konica model, but there's models from
Every brand.
almost every brand that basically are reusable disposables. And they're super cheap and they're plentiful and they get the job done.
Yeah.
So let's move on to number 2.
Number 2, which is not so disposable, is the famous, you say it
This
because you know
Mewtwo.
Olympus
It's like
Mewtwo.
the Pokemon, but that doesn't help you, does it?
No.
So the Mewtwo is probably by sales numbers our most popular point and shoot of the year. We cannot keep these in stock no matter what we do. If you know where to find a bunch of them, let us know. These are extremely popular, slightly weatherproofed, so splashes in rain, not diving. Extremely compact, so compact that again they wrote it on the back, ultra compact. So little tap themselves on the shoulder kind of thing.
Yeah.
But really, when you think of a point and shoot, this sort of checks all the boxes. It's super easy to use. You have a flash, you have flash control, you have the one-handed operation. It fits in your pocket. It's sort of the quintessential point and shoot. And this has been number 1 or number 2 for probably 5 or 6 years. And only growing more and more popular because, as we said earlier, this is arguably the one on the table that they made the most of these. They made maybe even millions of these Mewtwo's. Also known as what is it?
Stylus Epic.
Yes, Stylus Epic.
In the US market. Yeah, and one thing to note is like the popularity of this camera has come because they were so abundant that every market had them for $5, $10. You could buy them for over a decade for that price. And they were superb cameras. So that made the name that has carried on to 2023 for these cameras to now reach probably more of a price than they probably sold new back in the day. But it's a supply and demand thing. People search for them, people pay for them. So that's the price they have. Obviously, if you can find it in a market for a couple, 10, 20 euros or, dollars or whatever currency you use, do get it. It's worth more just for spares, like the door comes off easily and has a ball bearing and the like clicks it open, which is kind of nice to have. But yeah, this is a very, very nice camera, shoots really well, and it has everything you need from a point and shoot. And it kind of was like the end of the point and shoot era, and they're plentiful. So yes, if you find one in your family's drawer, you got some little bit of gold nugget there. Yeah. But yeah, and alternatives to that.
So let's start off with a kind of interesting one that we haven't mentioned before and that doesn't really get mentioned, and that's the Fuji Tiara. And this is a higher end point and shoot. The build quality is far superior to the Mewtwo, in my opinion at least. It's metal.
It goes more in line with the Contax T2 finish.
So this is a high end point and shoot. It's very small, with I believe a 32 millimeter, and I can please correct me if I'm wrong. F3.5 lens. This was one of Fuji's forays into the high-end market.
It's like a bar of soap looking.
Yeah, it does kind of. We can put a photo up.
It's like a titanium bar of soap.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's also a zoom model as well that is a great option. Sort of a high-end, but a bit of a sleeper pick.
And another alternative we have here, and we're breaking the rule of point and shoots, but I think it's fine. We make the rules. So is the Olympus XA. Like we said, it's a rangefinder camera. It's not a point and shoot per se. But in the XA family, Connor mentioned before, we have the XA2, the XA1, the XA3, the XA4, which has a 28, and you can change the ISO to 1600, which is my favorite. Close focus too. They are kind of like a line of cameras that are very nice, and they're also made a lot of them. So if you want to go for kind of like the Olympus name, but you want to have maybe a little bit more control, they are not point and shoots, so they don't have AF, but they do perform really well, and they have a bit of a cult design and following. So if you want to have something and maybe you don't want to just rely on the AF, you can use something like an XA or XA lineup.
You are the only person I've ever met who thinks the XA4 is a good camera.
It has a 28. It can push to 1600, which is what I push on my black and white film.
That's the macro one, isn't it?
Yes, and it goes close up. So tell me what's wrong with that one.
Hey,
we'll leave it there.
Look, people,
you guys can
please
comment
call me
below.
out of the comments.
And they're kind of cheap too.
Yeah,
still.
they're cheap for
a reason. Thank you.
I would say.
And the last alternative to the MU2, Mewtwo.
Yeah, we have the Pentax SBL Mini written down, and that's one of it's Pentax's sort of point and shoot with a prime lens. That one's definitely a 32 millimeter, I believe 2.8.
Yeah.
With a sliding lens cover. A lot of them look very similar to this Mu1 Limited,
or a little bit like this one too. A little bit less. It's a mix.
Smaller.
Yeah.
But they're kind of shiny. They have the same kind of finish, and
plastic.
You'll see. Yeah, it's plastic treated with this sort of chrome look, and it wears off really badly on the Pentaxes. So they maybe aren't the prettiest, but the people who have used them know that they take really good pictures. They have that same Pentax SMC coating you see on their lenses that really, at the time, Pentax lenses were the best bang for your buck, and they arguably still are today.
Yeah.
But that same degree of quality and care put into a point and shoot.
Yeah, so it's pretty nice.
Not to like.
And let's go with number one, which probably everybody knows which one it is, but it's the Contax T2.
Yeah. So this is the one that everyone's looking for.
The one that everyone says they hate, but they still want to get.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a popular piñata to be bashed, but it's also, if you find one, you're gonna buy it, and you probably won't sell it.
Yeah.
Because the people who use these cameras really love these cameras and will buy 2 or 3 or even more if one breaks, which they do, as all point and shoots do.
I have 2.
Yeah. Got extremely popular because it was seen online. It's used by fashion photographers all over the world, and that's probably how Kendall Jenner got her hands on it.
Yeah, celebrities started picking them up. It was on the Saturday Night Live, and then almost every artist that has a film camera has either had it or wanted it or bought it. I mean, obviously for them, it's pocket money. For other users like ourselves, it's a premium camera. It has that like titanium fit. Well, it is titanium. I guess the T is for titanium. So it has the nice feeling. It has the design. This was actually Kyocera and where's the Yashica T5. This era, they kind of coexisted in the same brand, and this was like the consumer-ish bit more, and this was the premium versions. So it has a lot of good features that the Yashica kind of also has. It does not have the Carl lens. It's a 38 2.8, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
It has aperture control, even though it does a lot of overriding. So don't believe everything you do on a point and shoot. Many times they kind of like...
It does have a program mode sort of built in so that even if you pick the aperture, it won't it won't ruin your shot.
It does what a
good shot.
It does what a point and shoot wants to do, which is give you always good results. And this is the same. It has the top dial, which lets you change the focusing distance. You can have it as AF, infinity, and then you can go down all the way to like 0.7 meters, so you don't have to focus. Like, it doesn't guess, it just takes a picture. There's a little bit less lag on it. It has over and under exposure, so again, you can push, you can pull film, or you can just compensate for light in the background, which is what you should probably do sometimes. But yeah, they're really nice cameras. They are hated and loved upon different people. There's different colors, finishes. There's the silver champagne color, that's the popular one, and the cheaper one. There's black, that's super rare. There's multiple different tones, and it has that cover, which Sometimes it's bashed and it works. It's fine. But yeah, premium camera, premium price, also very, very looked for. Like we said, celebrities use them, which means that everybody that follows a celebrity will search for what's the camera they talked about. And they come to find this at over, nowadays like 1,000. So yeah, they're very, very good cameras. But, you've got to decide if you want to spend this kind of money on a point and shoot.
Yeah.
And we have the alternatives, which would take us to.
Before we go to there, I really think one thing that sets this apart from other point and shoots is that it's a 38 versus the 28 or 35s that we're seeing on most of these. The difference between 35 and 38 seems minor, but that really makes this like a normal lens, whereas a 35 would be more wide angle, which gives you a totally different perspective. And compared especially to the Yashica G5, the sonar design in here is more complicated, but it gives you much better, especially in the corners, sharpness and light fall off. So that was sort of the difference between the Yashica and the Contax, was a more complicated lens design that was supposed to be sharper.
Suppose, because I find it to not be so amazing. But yeah, and alternatives.
Yeah. So for the Contax T2, one thing you can look for is the Contax T3, which we don't have here, but it's the next evolution of this design. It's quite a bit smaller, but with, I believe it has a 35 millimeter lens.
I think everything is pretty much the same as the Contax T2, except for it's smaller. Yeah. And they were made in way less numbers, because this was when digital was starting to come in, and people didn't merge into a very premium point and shoot. So they're very rare, and they have some small issues with the teeth on the back and stuff like that they break. I had one back in the day. I enjoyed it. It's very pocketable. It's the same premium design as the T2, but you might find one and you might, enjoy it, but it does command almost 3 times the price of a T2, sorry. So yeah, very, very premium. And in the recommendations as premium, we have the other one, the Leica Mini Lux.
Yeah, and the T2 and the Mini Lux are kind of really great to compare to one another. The T2 came out a bit earlier, and you can really tell that Leica got some influence from it. They handle very similarly. They have almost identical feature sets down to the manual focus dial up here on the corner.
Even has aperture dial up there.
Yeah, it has aperture as well. So that I find that to be maybe a better system than the lens.
And it has a 42.4?
Yeah, so a 42.4 Sumarit lens on there. So even more of a standard lens than a wide angle.
Yeah.
And the premium feel is there, and it's a Leica lens. Really great results.
Yeah. They're good cameras. I mean, this is the premium line. There's nothing wrong with them. It's more a taste of what you want to get. Yeah. And the Mini Lux is nice. They have a lot of settings in the menu that you touch buttons and you can start. I highly recommend if you get a Mini Lux and you want the best out of it, get yourself the manual. Because I started reading the manual and I just got bored of it. It was so much stuff it can do. Yeah. Way more than these Contax can do. But maybe that's something that you want to have and you enjoy. And then we go to the Fuji Classe. I don't know how you say that one.
I think Class. We'll get taught in the comments. Yeah. It's fine. So there's the Class S and the Class W. The same body style, but with different lenses in them. Both of them are high-end point and shoots made by Fuji. Also sold under the Rolei brand. Really nice cameras. They have, again, the manual aperture control on the front, as well as manual focus for some. I think they switched it with some models. There's a dial about here where there's either aperture or manual focus control. With excellent Fuji modern lenses, these are even a bit newer than the T2. So the EBC coatings that make Fuji lenses have such special color these days is still on these point and shoots.
And they were sold till very late.
Yeah.
Well, that's one thing a lot of people forget about Fuji is Fuji discontinued most of their film cameras very, very late.
Yeah, like in even 2010s.
They came out with the Fuji GF670, if I'm not mistaken, very late in the game. And
2000s.
Yeah.
2000s.
So that Fuji was there, and they were doing very premium Fuji lenses. Fuji non-glass is superb, even though it doesn't have the German, naming like Carl Zeiss and Leica and stuff like that. But it's really, really good. So it is a little bit lesser feel quality to them when you grab them, but they're very, very well made. Don't let it this is just a nice metal housing.
Yeah.
The Fuji is just well built, like compact and like, tight in its way.
Yeah.
And then in that lineup, going for Japanese kind of premium cameras,
Yeah.
we have one that I've never used myself or seen, the Minolta TC1, which has a 28 mil
Yeah.
and aperture control in the front.
Yeah, it's a 28 f3.5, and it's sort of, again, like the GR1 that we mentioned earlier, is at the point of design where you can't make the camera any smaller, really. The TC1 is more small this way, and a bit thicker, but there's only so far that they can go with the design. I mean, they have the manual aperture control, and I believe that was on purpose. Like, yeah.
It's a premium camera,
Yeah.
premium feel. It goes with the #1 list, basically alternatives. But yeah, that's basically the top 10 point and shoots for 2023. Obviously, the data gathered is from 2022, but we like to give people like a heads up onto what to look for, maybe find something or enjoy. Obviously, your comments and suggestions are very important, so make sure you read that because, you guys usually have a lot more insight too. Sometimes we forgot something. But yeah, point and shoots are great. They're cameras that we just carry around. Try not to think too much about what you're doing with them, and giving you maybe that extra feature you want. Like I said, I like the 28 and the pushing to 1600. Connor likes the sticker version, where you can like tune it as much as you want. But you just like pick the one you like and enjoy it. They are electronic cameras. It is 2023. They will probably fail at some point, not so long from now. So take that into mind. I don't buy any point and shoot that I won't think could break on me, and it won't make me like upset, to a high degree. Obviously, I won't be happy. But yeah, take it into consideration. Like, it's not a mechanical camera. They're very hard to repair. They were not thought to be opened and checked.
Yeah.
Here at the store, we check them to see if everything is working as it should. If it's not, it's mentioned. And some things that people don't know is they sometimes didn't have, like you mentioned before, like the highest features, like low shooting capacity, or they don't expose properly at EV15 because it maxes out at 1/500th of a second and f11.
Yeah.
So read a little bit about them.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing in general, is to understand the camera's capabilities and the ranges that it was designed for. And then when you use a camera within those capabilities, it'll work and it'll get the job done. But if you try to take it outside of that, if it's not rated for cold weather, or it doesn't really have the shutter speed options, like you said, for bright light or low light, expecting it to take good photos in those situations is it's just not fair to the camera, really.
And that's why flash was basically built into all of these, is because like the moment they have a doubt, they just pop that flash, and they know exactly the settings that the flash will make the picture good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the point and shoots for 2023. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, and thanks for searching so that we have data to make these videos.
Yeah.
Leave a comment below with the one that we missed, because we probably missed one that you really like.
Yeah. But this is based on searches. So
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.